But I just want to say I found this a synchronicity in the fact that we're doing a series on the alchemy of the heart for the month of November, because truly Christmas is celebrating the birth of a heart awakening in our own nature. Now, I know we've always known that, but just to identify that we're priming the pump here all through the month of November to get our feelings, our highest, most exalted feelings available to really have a heart-centered Christmas. A few weeks ago, we had a visitor, and I went up to talk to him before the service, and I said, "How did you find us?" And he said, "Well, I drive an Uber, and I came over to the neighborhood a few times on routes, and I saw the church here, and I'm looking for a spiritual home for my wife and my daughter." And I said, "Well, just to sort of orient you to what you're about to encounter, our teachings are derivative of Jesus Christ's teaching of the kingdom of heaven, and we understand that to be a state of consciousness. So we do a lot of work with consciousness." He said, "Oh, that sounds great." So as the service was going on, you see, I was looking at the service through the eyes of a stranger, perhaps. How would it look to someone who didn't know us? And I got to tell you, it was a really interesting shift I got, because that particular Sunday, more than ever before, even more than today, I think, everybody did everything with relish. It was like, first we had the choir and the bells, and you could just feel this kind of buzz in the air, like, "Oh, wasn't that good? Oh, we loved that. That was wonderful." And then the person got up to read the daily word. "Oh, we just loved that daily word. Just say it." And every element of the service that came along was done with this relish and delight and enthusiasm of feeling, more than I've ever seen before, anywhere, that particular day. And I thought, gee, if I was a stranger, that would really, really impress me more than anything they said content-wise. I want to come and play and engage with this enthusiasm and this delight that's going on here. Feelings coming from the heart. That's what we're after. And actually the whole series here on the alchemy of the heart then came out of a conversation I had that Sunday when I was talking with Nathan. Nathan wants to be a spiritual leader, and he has spoken here before. He's kind of doing his own ministry, but he is so gifted at hearing the feeling content, the feeling level of what you're saying, and magnifying it. So when we were talking, I told him how that service felt that day, that people were so delighted with what we were doing at each step of the way. And he asked me, "And how did that feel to you, Diane?" And it took me a minute to sort of appreciate and get in touch with my feelings about that. I said, "Well, actually it felt like an arrival, something I've been pulling for forever to experience, spiritual community." And in that moment I realized how significant it is, how powerful it is for us to be in touch with our own feelings and use them, recognize them, honor them, expand them. It deepens our lives so much. Now, when you go to ministerial school, when I was in ministerial school and they're teaching us counseling, the definition of a problem is having a feeling that you don't want to have. Simple, right? That's pretty simple. So if you don't want to have any problems, then just embrace all your feelings. Don't have any feelings that you say, "Ooh, that hurts too much, I'm going to repress that. I'm going to push that down and I'm not going to feel it." Well, our life's journey is in large part being in touch with our own feelings and staying in touch with them. And it allowed me to see this week when I'm questioning the ministerial students. I was in Detroit all week working as a volunteer with the Unity Urban Ministerial School, celebrating their 40th anniversary. They had a banquet Friday night. So we're questioning, it's kind of like oral exams, but we weren't questioning them on what did they know about the Bible and the unity metaphysics. We were questioning them on their spiritual maturity, which boils down to, how do you handle your feelings? Tell us, the questions go, tell us about a time when, someone offended you. How did you feel? What did you do with your feelings? What did you learn from your experience? And what can you teach about that? Or what would you do different next time? Question after question, that kind of situation where you get emotional reactions to your experiences. And the hardest thing for a minister and for anyone is the self-care of your own feelings. Which takes me to this work by a man named Michael Brown. How many of you have come across his work? I was first given his first book called The Presence Process by my former boss from Silent Unity, a gal named Joni Grafeo. She said, I bought 2 copies of this book, and I feel you're the person I'm supposed to give this to. And I read it through and through. Well, it turns out Michael Brown is an Australian former musician who was diagnosed with an incurable illness that some people kill themselves over the pain from. It's called cluster headaches. And he decided he was going to go on a journey and find out a way to cure his illness, a healing for it. And now he's written a second book. And guess what the name of his second book is? The Alchemy of the Heart. Same thing that we're following this thread of. So the point of all this Michael Brown work is to tell you that he discovered that illness, in his definition, is caused by feelings that we've repressed into the subconscious area. We don't want to carry them. We don't want to feel them. And they're so turbulent, you see. They're so frictional. They have so much resistance in them. They're energetically just in a state of constant friction and heat, and that it's actually causing our own personal hell. That's really what hell is. It's negative emotions that we have stuffed and that are down there grinding away and causing a kind of heat and smoke and friction that is hell is a perfect metaphor for that phenomena. And in fact, the craving for smoking cigarettes and anything else, smoking itself, is to match that energy. It's kind of an unconscious tendency, to need to match that, because otherwise it might come to consciousness. So one very effective way to cure yourself of addiction to smoking is to heal those emotions that are being repressed. I know I said that today we would do breakout sessions, but nobody signed up to assist with supporting that to happen, so I took that as a sign that nobody wants it to happen. It's just not anointed, is it? Is anybody going to miss it if we do that? Okay. That's what I thought. Okay, good. We can talk about it, but we'll get there. But it's we can have a perfectly wonderful gathering for a spiritual experience on Sunday morning without doing breakout sessions. Okay. So, do you realize that stories develop our feeling nature? Stories give us an idea of where the journey leads in the transformation of our feelings. And the oral tradition of the Hebrew people, that's what that is. Can you just get that, you know? So our Bible is the outgrowth of a heart-connected activity, an activity that's actually generated by the heart, which is storytelling, to help us process feelings, to help us be prepared for the feelings that we may have to encounter. This is why we have literature, perhaps love literature. All the literary arts are derivatives of storytelling, novels, cinema, cartoons, comic books, the oral traditions of the tribal roots of our past, sitting around at night, preparing our children for sleep, and sharing oral traditions, oral versions of very dramatic plot stories. So the Bible is the origin of all literary art in the Christian tradition, the Judeo-Christian tradition of Western culture. And that's another good reason why we're having that class. I just figured that out recently. They help me see these things. So we've expanded now, though, to include any tradition, not just the Judeo-Christian tradition of myths and stories and legends. Of course, we've long been studying Greek mythology, but all of these traditions, tribal traditions, because they all offer wisdom, heart intelligence, and deepen the feeling nature. Did you ever realize that ballet is a way of getting away from the verbal, intellectual part of storytelling and myth and the metaphor of human existence, that ballet, and in fact all types of dance, are a heart-centered expression. The verbal domain is so couched in the intellect, and this activates the nonverbal heart capacities to see dance, especially ballet, and song. Have you ever woken up with a song in your head? That's your heart intelligence giving you a little message of your existential moment right now. Broadening your recognition of your own life. It's very much like a dream in your sleep. When you remember a dream that you've had in sleep, it's a way it's an existential message. This is my existence. This is a metaphoric picture of my existence. Same with a song that comes into your head from nowhere. So, are there stories that make you weep? I asked for people to turn in bits of paper with things that make them weep on it. So I saw an array of things. Most of them were sad things, though. So I'm encouraging you to find things that make you weep, not for sadness, but for an exalted feeling that is so moving that it makes you weep. So I have some examples of those kinds of stories. Did anybody notice the scene from The Wizard of Oz I quoted in the emails I sent out? We could do a skit on that, but anybody want to play the Dorothy? Well, it goes like this, the wicked witch of the witch has been melted with the water, symbolizing baptism. And then Dorothy's standing there, and she says, "No, I'll never get home," because the wizard has sailed off in his hot air balloon without her. And the good witch says, "Oh, you could have gone home whenever you wanted." "I could. Well, why didn't you tell me?" So she tells her, "What did you learn?" And she said, "Well, I've learned that if I go looking for my heart's desire, if it's not in my backyard, I never really lost it." And she says, "That's right." And then the scarecrow, symbolizing intellect, says, "But that's so simple. I should have thought of it for you." And then the Tin Man, symbolizing the heart, says, "I should have felt it in my heart." You can get through life figuring things out with that simple technique, that simple mantra. I can feel it in my heart. And so the witch says, no, she had to learn it for herself. Beautiful. Anybody cry at the end of Wizard of Oz besides me? Yeah, yeah. No, you're not gonna get out of here without hearing me tell you a whole story. I'm just gonna mention a few, though, other ones. The story of, that was recently found in an attic that was written by Louisa May Alcott. Just a story, it was never published. It was written by a little girl who was publishing her own newspaper, who wrote to Louisa May Alcott and said, could you write a story for my little newspaper that I'm doing just like Jo March did her newspaper? And so she did and sent her this story. It is just an extraordinary story. Now it is published. It's called The Quiet Little Woman. Have you ever read this story? And do you remember we used to have a congregant, she's now passed on, who cried so easily? Phyllis Weber. Yeah. When we would do a little play and the emotional content of the play would be right there hinging on compassion, Phyllis just weep. So this story makes me cry because The Quiet Little Woman, because it's a story of an orphan girl who doesn't get adopted until she's almost 12 years old. And a family comes in and takes her home with them because they need somebody to help around the farm. It's a mother and a father and a brother and a sister and a grandmother. And so the little girl becomes friends with the grandmother and starts writing letters to the grandmother. And in her letters she says, oh, how I wish that my mother would just hold me and share tender moments with me. Oh, how I wish my sister and I could play together as friends. Oh, how I wish my brother and I could be close and he would protect me and show me the ways of the forest. And oh, how I wish my father would be kind and gentle to me and when he gives me jobs to do. And she loved them all so much. And she was so looking forward to Christmas when they all go to their aunt's house. I mean, the grandmother's house. Actually, it was an aunt. Okay, aunt. And they said, well, you stay here and take care of the house. We're going to go, and we'll be back overnight, feed the cats, blah, blah, blah. So they go to the aunt's house, and she says, well, now where's so-and-so? Let's call her Betty. Where's Betty? And they say, oh, she didn't want to come. She stayed home with taking care of the house. The aunt says, you are wrong. You have no idea how she feels. She got out the letters and read them. They saw her totally different. And they came back from their visit with the aunt. And they opened their hearts to her. And she finally had the family she'd been yearning for and a wonderful Christmas. And she lived happily ever after. That's an incredible transformation, isn't it? Isn't it? And to capture that in a story, what a brilliant premise for a story. I love that story. I always want to do that for a play at Christmas time. But now, the story that I want to tell you today, because stories deepen our compassion, and it's a wonderful illustration of the power of feelings in the heart. So when I was a child, I had a grandmother who knew all the fairy tales by heart, and she could recite them as many times as you want, exactly the same way, over and over. And I used to sit in her lap and I'd say, okay, I want Cinderella now. Okay, I want Snow White and Rose Red now. But the one story she didn't tell was the one my mother told. Because she couldn't tell it that well like my mother could. It was the story of Rapunzel. You know, so you might not have heard this version. So there was a woman who was pregnant, and over the garden wall she saw a head of red cabbage that she just yearned for. You know how when you're pregnant, some of you women, when you're pregnant, you just have a craving for something, you have to have it. And it's the weirdest thing. There's never anything appetizing to a normal person, you know, like red cabbage. So her husband says, no, I can't go over there and get that. That garden belongs to a witch. We know this. So she begged him, and finally, in the middle of the night, he snuck over took the red cabbage, gave it to her, and she ate it. So several days later, the owner of the garden came in and said, "Ha ha, I know you stole my red cabbage, and you shall pay me for it, and the price shall be your firstborn child." Ugh. So they thought, okay, this can't really happen. So they went ahead and they had the baby. And a couple months after the baby's born, the witch comes over and I've come to collect what you owe me. She took the baby away. And she spirited away to a castle. And she raised the baby alone in the castle. And this was a very good example for a young child to see how some people can become obsessed and very possessive, and you don't want to let yourself get trapped in somebody's possessive love. So Rapunzel grew up to be a beautiful young lady. And she was kept in this tower that had no doors, but just a window. And the way that her witch surrogate mother came to see her was every day she would come and stand at the bottom of the tower and call up, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." And Rapunzel would let down her long hair, and the witch would climb up the hair. So one day, a prince was going by in the forest, naturally. And the prince heard this, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." So he snuck up to see what it was, and he saw this happen, this weird thing happen where the hair comes down from a window at the top of a tower, and the witch climbs up the hair, stays a while, climbs back down and leaves. So he watched a few more days, and he saw that it was a regular occurrence. So one day after the witch left, he went to the bottom of the window and said, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." When the hair came down, he comes climbing up. And this is where my mother was so descriptive at how they met. You know, he climbs in the window and she goes, "Oh, who are you?" And he says, "Well, I'm Prince so-and-so, Charles, whatever. And I've witnessed that you have a visitor every day, and I wanted to meet you." And so they got to know each other, talk all about the big wide world that she'd never seen. And he said, "Well, you've got to get out of here somehow." She says, "No, my witch mother will not allow me to leave. I'm not permitted to ever leave here." And he says, "Oh, well, I'm going to. I've got to get you out of here. You've got to get out into the world and become an adult, and become a person, and have your own life." So they had a plan that he was going to come and he was going to cut her hair and tie it to the bars, and then they would climb down together. And on the very day that he came and tied the hair to the bars, the witch caught on to it, and she climbed up that hair and she caught them together in the tower. And she was so angry and so offended that she threw the prince out of the tower. And she took the girl down safely and just turned her loose and said, "I never want to have anything to do with you ever again." Well, unbeknownst to Rapunzel, the prince, he survived the fall, but he fell into a bramble bush, and it blinded his eyes. And so he became a blind beggar for many years. And Rapunzel wandered the world, making her way in the world, and one day she heard a blind beggar saying, "Alms for the poor," and it sounded like her prince, and so she went to see, and it was he. And so she said, I'm your Rapunzel." And he said, "Oh, my dear, but I'm blind, I can't see a thing." And so she sat down and she held him in her arms, and she wept tears of compassion, and they fell on his eyes and healed him and healed his sight. Tears of compassion healed his sight. That was so touching to me as a child. Is it not touching to you? This moment, this wonderful moment of alchemy, the alchemy of the heart. That our feelings, she wasn't trying to fix it. She wasn't resisting it. She wasn't condemning it. She was simply feeling compassion for this person that she loved with all her heart. We have that same power. It happens to us all the time. As we can allow compassion to well up in us, compassion for the world, compassion for people, compassion for the animals. And what is compassion? It's feeling the feelings of another.
I wrote this song in 2015 after both of my parents were gone by then, but a very, very close friend of my mom and dad's had passed away, and I wrote this song. But I never recorded it, and I really never, I put it away. And then I forgot how it went, and I even forgot how to play it. And then, well, the daughter of the friend who passed away I always wanted her to hear this song. However, she passed away as well a week or two ago, and so I never got a chance to play it for her either. And then, well, the song may speak for itself. I always wanted to write a song with ooh, ooh, ooh kind of stuff in it, and so this has that. Carries us home. Walk with me, we'll never walk alone. Stop, look, and listen, my, how we have grown. See the fruits of the seeds we have sown. Sing and dance, in our hearts we know the words and steps. Lightly feel life's music effects. Take time for friendship, let there be love for one another. Walk or run, give love to everyone. Take rest in love and spirit. If we listen, we can hear it. No words can convey in our hearts what we want to say. So we sing. Life can change in an instant's breath. God knows its length, we determine its breadth. Light of love runs through us all. If we listen, we can hear its call. Every moment's precious, every precious moment. Near the end, that's all. Take rest in love and spirit. If we listen, we can hear it. No words can convey in our hearts what we want to say. So we sing. Ooh. We sing and dance until we can no more. Young ones carry us to eternity's shore. The last sweet chord of life echoes into silence. Life's true purpose in love everlasting commence. Take rest in love in spirit. If we listen, we can hear it. No words can convey in our hearts what we want to say. So we sing. Ooh.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, let's take some deep breaths. Relax. Let our energy transform to positive feelings of peace, joy, acceptance, marvel, praise, as we lift our vision to the light of the infinite perfection of God. We know that we are sourced by an infinite energy that is of spirit, perfect, whole, free, and infinite. And as we feel that source filling us now, as we become more and more expanded in our awareness of this moment, we allow our hearts to thrill with the joy of living. Our statement is, I feel with compassion and mercy. So let us verbalize this together now. Together, I feel with compassion and mercy. For he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High abides under the shadow of the Almighty, in a place of infinite mercy. compassion, grounded in faith. And now, as we dwell in the silence of our own souls, we drink deeply of this wonder in the silence. This beauty reigns at every level of our being, radiating light, healing, peace, and love through us to all the world. These wonders we behold. Amen. Thank you.